So, actually, have another privilege of introducing another one of my idols. So this gentleman is definitely renowned for his thought leadership in pushing the media industry forward. He's the author of a brand new book called Public Parts. And today, he is going to discuss the rise and fall of marketing dictatorships. Please help me welcome Jeff Jarvis. Thank you, sir.
Good morning for one more minute. I'll talk really fast because we're behind. But I wrote a book about publicness and the value of publicness. To get there, I kind of had to go through privacy and figure out what privacy was. And I found it was extremely difficult to define privacy. I also found that privacy fears, as we see these days, comes in connection with new technologies, with change. So for example, the first serious discussion of a legal right to privacy in the US did not come until 1890. And the reason for that was the invention of the Kodak camera, tied to the penny press. And the New York Times at the time has great lines about fiendish Kodakers lying in wait. Teddy Roosevelt banned Kodaking in Washington parks for a short time. So obviously now we see another technology coming along causing incredible change and causing fear and an effort to forestall that change and to regulate that change. And so we see a lot about privacy. My fear is that if all we do is talk about privacy, 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 we lose the opportunities that come from publicness. And it's not either or, it's not binary, it's not on and off, it's more like hot and cold. One depends upon the other. So what I want to talk about with you folks today, and I hope we have just a few minutes to also chat together, is the notion of a radically public company. And what would that look like? In the book, I go through a list of things that could be construed to be very public. I go too far. That's what I do for a living, is going too far. And try to find then examples of companies that do this. So I want to talk a few minutes about that. A few examples. One, I think, is Best Buy, with its 12th Force Twitter account. Awful name, terrible name, but I was told by a Best Buy person last week that it came from the ad agency, not from Best Buy. You blame everything on the agency, right? So 12th Force now has 3,000 people there answering a question. I've done this in Twitter where I've seen somebody come in and have a complaint or a question about Best Buy, and I say, try 12th Force. And bingo, you know, there's 3,000 people. Somebody in that group has the answer. It's pretty impressive. The other company I talk about that I like quite a bit in the company is Local Motors. How many of you know Local Motors? Oh, good. Virgin crowd. Gee, I'm surprised. So Local Motors, started by a guy named Jay Rogers, designs and builds cars collaboratively. Now that sounds absurd. And when I talked about this notion in my last book, now out in paperback, people yelled at me, as they are wont to do, and they said that this is absurd. Collaborative design of cars is going to end up with the Homer. You remember Homer Simpson's car that he designed had two bubbles, one hermetically sealed so you couldn't hear the kids, with arm and leg restraints, shag carpeting, and many, many cup holders. It bankrupted Homer's cousin's car company. But what Jay has done here is really fascinating because people come in and they compete to design the car. The first design was done by a kid who wasn't even out of design school yet. And he won $20,000 to do it, and he got to see his car come to fruition. It's being built right now in Arizona, and it's a muscle car. As the process went along, they also wanted to design individual elements of the car, and to do that, they had to make public the entire design specs of the car, right? You had to be public with stuff to be collaborative. Now, somebody came along and they designed a taillight lens that the community loved. Gotta have it. And Jay Rogers, who is still the CEO of the company, he's still in charge of this. He has to put out safe cars and economical cars. He told the community, okay, I love it too. Just want to let you know that to tool up to make this special part will add $1,000 to the cost of every car. And the community, as one said, as if on Saturday Night Live, never mind. And they went looking instead for other parts, and they found a Honda taillight lens that cost $75. Now, what fascinates me about that story is that the community of customers, and by God there is one, given the respect and the opportunity to collaborate, we're making both economic and design decisions with the company. That's incredible, right? That's just unbelievably incredible to me. But it only happens if you are very, very public. It only happens if you open up incredibly to your customers. The other story that I love, I know you all know Kickstarter, and you all know the story of the watch band, right? That I can't remember the number, what he needed to make the watch band. I think it was something like $100,000, something like that. And as you know, he got $980,000 worth of pre-orders. Well, what fascinates me about Kickstarter then, and again, we all know that story, but there's lessons in that story for all of us. Here, somebody could start a company and a product using the capital of his customers. Here, he could find out that he actually had a product people wanted. If no one had given him pre-orders, he wouldn't have made it. So he zeroed out his risk. It's the ultimate consumer marketing and research to find out whether people are actually going to buy the product. He then opened up the process here. He could create this company. He had marketing from people who were saying, hey, look what I got on Kickstarter. What also fascinates me, though, is it probably changes the company radically. Because he doesn't have to have a company that lasts forever. It can last for 6 months. Because he's using somebody else's capital, somebody else's design, well, his design in this case, somebody else's manufacturing, distribution, marketing, all those things. So he can come together, do a pop-up corporation, and then let it collapse. And it changes the way that we look at companies, I think, by operating more collaboratively. Don't we wish that you could also do this with equity and try to break down the barriers of where we go with equity? But that's complicated. One more example. There's a guy named John Payton. Anybody heard of John? Media? No, God, virgins again. John is the CEO of Journal Register, which is a newspaper company. It was the most fucked up newspaper company in America, and considering how fucked up the newspaper industry is, that's saying something. It was abandoned and abused and orphaned. It was very Dickensian. I mean that. I went to one of their newspapers, and it was really frightening. Dickens would have been gotten nightmares. Payton took it over under a view of digital first, print last. And digital first means to him many things. It doesn't just mean slapping content online. It means that you bring the reader, the community, into the process of making what you make. And you've probably seen recently The Guardian is opening up its stories it's working on beforehand. So you also try to push your company to being digital. You push your advertisers to being digital. You push your readers to being digital. Yes, there's still a paper for now, while it's still profitable to do that, while the advertisers are still stupid and buy print over digital. But at some point, the paper could go away. And if he's done it right, then it works. He also just took over management of Media News, which includes the San Jose Mercury News and Denver and other papers. So that's the second largest newspaper company in America. Contrast that with our friend Rupert Murdoch, who is making very closed companies, right? He's putting walls around things. He put walls around the Times of London, and millions of online readers became 100,000. Now, that's his choice. He can do that. For all I know, the money can support what he's trying to do, and that's fine. But it is obviously and patently not a growth strategy, because it's a shrinkage strategy. He has paywalls around the Wall Street Journal. He has the Daily, but it's a paywall structure. And how many of you subscribe to the Daily on your iPad? 1, 2, 3. Okay. If it were free and ad-supported, how many of you would look at it once in a while? Right, so there's growth. Now, is that the right business model or not? That's for him to decide. All I'm suggesting here is, and you can go either way, but I'm going to bet on the people who are going to the public way, who are trying to open up radically. What else could you do if you were a radically public company? I think that you could open up all the data you have. Example, Toyota. My family probably owns has owned over the years about 8 Toyotas. My son's in college. He has one now. We have 2. My parents have one. My sister's had one. I've had them before. They're great cars. Even though I don't take them into the shop often enough, they keep going. They're wonderful. But I'm really pissed at Toyota in how it handled the acceleration problems. And their response to that was first obfuscation, and then second, Sunday morning commercials saying that our safety was one, and they said that, one of their highest priorities. Well, God damn it, it's your only priority. You're not a car company, you're a safety company. Right? You're a trust company. I don't buy the car from you, I buy the trust from you, and I put my children and my family in this car. To hell with you if that's the way you're going to treat us as one of your priorities. It's your top priority. So what would a radically public company do? It is my want to go too far, but I'll push it too far. I think that Toyota should create an API for every one of its repairs and every one of its reported problems. Because imagine what would happen if a bunch of hackers out there hacked that and could have identified the acceleration problem before Toyota could, right? There's a benefit to Toyota. What's the other benefit to Toyota? It yields trust. You know everything that's going on, right? And I would trust the open company over the closed company. Imagine health, too. You know, I have been called recently a utopian, and I'll take the label, because I want to imagine a better world. We can't build that better world unless we imagine it. And so let's just talk about health for a second. I imagine and hope for a world where we can all talk about our health without fear. Why don't we today? Well, first let's say what good could come from this. We could find out who has ailments and share information with them and make connections with them. We could put correlative data together that could do amazing things to try to find causes. We could find out all kinds of things. But why don't we share health data? Well, number one, fear about jobs. We won't get hired. Well, that's something you can solve with legislation. And if you don't discriminate against me because I have prematurely gray hair, maybe you don't discriminate me because I have cancer. Number two, insurance. Well, we hope that Obamacare, so-called, takes care of that in the no pre-existing condition clause. May it please stay in force or come into force. But three, the main reason we don't share health and talk about health is stigma. Right? We're ashamed of this. And so I'm going to pick on Francine and hope she doesn't mind. I wrote about my prostate cancer on my blog. I told the world how my penis doesn't work well anymore. You cannot get more public than that. Right? Why the hell would I do that? Because I got value out of it. Friends of mine who'd had the operation 10 years before, I never would have known they'd had it. They came forward. They told me what I was going to go through in incredible detail. That was better than any doctor could have given me. People shared their stories and their information. Most amazing thing right now, Francine and I see each other face to face rarely, but Francine came in and told the, if I may, heart-rending story of her husband who didn't get his prostate cancer treated and she lost him. Now that was an extremely public act, more than my publicness, because she was showing not just someone's body but her heart and telling the world about this. And what did that do? Men came in and said, damn it, I'm going to get my PSA checked. I believe firmly that by doing that, by being public in that way, Francine Hardaway saves lives. That's what publicness gives us. Now, by the way, the government said a week and a half ago not to get tested anymore. Bullshit. When in the world is less information better than more information? What you do with the information is the problem, but for God's sakes, get the information. Find out what's going on. Fuck them. Prostate and testicular cancer are curable, right? The problem with it is that we don't know the bad kind from the good kind, so they take all out. Some of them, maybe mine didn't need to be taken out. I'd rather have taken the risk and known it. So end of that sermon. So publicness in all kinds of ways, I think, leads to opportunities. How can a company be radically, amazingly public? I think that it opens up its processes entirely. And I hear companies say all the time, well, but those are my secrets, and my competitors will steal my secrets. Well, if you really think as a company that your value is your secret, I think you've got a problem. Look at Detroit. Go back to Jay Rogers. Right? They literally cloak cars until finally there's that day when they uncloak them, and we all yawn. They're boring. They're crap. Right? There was no chance. My Toyota that I still like, I curse it every single day because they didn't put in a 39-cent plug to plug in these new things called Walkmen or iPods or iPhones, right? And because they didn't have a way to listen to us. So would you rather be known with your customers for secrecy or for your relationship? I think the company with the open relationship is going to win. So I wanted to say that, and I want to leave some time for you to yell at me or disagree with me. And I would like to play Oprah. So is there a mic? And I'll take it around. Thank you. Oprah time.
I just want to say, by the way, I loved your idea of privacy versus public as being hot and cold instead of black and white. Because
where it's due to a CBC host.
Okay, because we tend to, in marketing particularly, and in larger businesses, tend to try to find a black and white. Yes. So I kind of two questions. One is, if it's hot and cold, how do we not become lukewarm with a lot of stuff? And then I was going to also say, it's if you want to take an example of a more black and white approach, Apple seems to take a very black and white approach to privacy, all private, all the time, yes. And obviously they're very successful.
Apple is the grand exception to all rules. God bless Steve Jobs. Why could he do it? Because he was just that fucking good, right? And if you are that fucking good, you can set your own rules, right? Most companies are not. So I think Apple is the grand exception to every rule I've ever put forward about what would Google do or about privacy and publicness. I think that you try to go more toward the one, and you put it this way. Your user, your customer, has a right to their privacy to control what they do, to be fully informed about everything you do, why you do it, what they get for it, for you to learn from them, absolutely. You, on the other hand, as a company, should be absolutely open. Government should be even more open. You have competitive reasons to not be open about some things, that's true. Government must be fully open. So look at it as a scale, right? Hot is government, which must become open by default. Now it's closed by default. Companies who are wise are going to get more open, and customers have the control. So last thing here is that the obnoxious way I put this, and I put this obnoxiously, is that advertising is failure. In this new world of relationships, you have a great product, great service, your customers sell it for you, you don't need to advertise. The only reason to advertise is if that failed. And so that's the ideal. It's an ideal, but it's an ideal. I'm sorry I'm driving you guys nuts.
So where do you draw the line as far as, do you put your, I know companies like Zappos drop their P&L online and let you look at their profits and losses. Where do you draw the line?
I think you have a reason to draw it somewhere. You draw it, I would default to open in public in all matters except where it's going to clearly hurt me, and I know that it's going to hurt me, and I can justify it hurting me. That's it. I would, personnel matters, that kinds of thing. Would you put every salary up online? Well, in Scandinavia, probably yes, but here that would piss off employees. So here you probably wouldn't do that, for example. Anybody else? Yeah. Hey there. We only see each other at conferences.
That's right. And I live in Morristown, and you're in Burnham.
Yeah. That was private information. Go ahead.
What if we woke up tomorrow and found all our Facebook data on WikiLeaks? How would our world be changed?
Well, I think the mistake with social services, with the internet, is that we gave the impression to anyone that the internet was a place to put secrets. It is the world's worst place to ever put a secret. If you have it in a secret, don't friggin' put it there, right? It is this is a sharing industry. Hey. The mistake, I think they would have done differently. They would have learned that this is a sharing industry. It is built on sharing. 800 million of us are not crazy and not drunk. We're doing it for a reason. If I tell you something, Paul, it is then public to that extent. The responsibility for that, I say, and the ethic for that privacy, rests with you. Because what happens, it's out of my control, right? Now it's with you as to whether or not you as an individual spread it around like gossip, or use it to make fun of me, which you could do, or if you're a company, use my data in bad ways. That ethic is with you. I think the ethic of publicness is an ethic of sharing. It says if I reveal that since I was at the World Trade Center, I've had 1 heart condition and 2 cancers, it's probably not related, but maybe it is. So by revealing that data and those data points that people could correlate that data, that may get value. So if you put stuff on Facebook, you better assume that it might end up on page 1 of the New York Times or WikiLeaks. And if it gets there, the reason it's probably going to get there is because a person, not the technology, did you in. And I think that's where that goes. And I've got a flashing red light, so they're going to yell at me. So I don't mean to make this a plug, but it is a plug, so I'm going to be open about this. Books are for sale out there, and I'll sign them, which is very nice of Brian and company to do. Thank you very much, and enjoy lunch.